Well, we really appreciate y'all being here. I'm Will Campbell, work for Bayou Title, and we have Brent Laliberty on the phone today. He is the CEO of the company. We are the largest in the state. We also represent Mississippi, commercial, residential, all those things. But we're talking today about escalation addendums. And the reason why those are so important is that you have a lot of controversy about them, but regardless of how you feel about them, the actual reality is that they're going to come across your desk. So it's important that you're aware of them regardless of the emotional feel. We're excited to have Brent on. I'm going to share some content that is going to give you the overview as he describes things. So if you have any questions, we'll hold them to the end because we are going to have a whole presentation. If Brent, you want to start? I will get the visual going.
Okay, thank you, Will, and welcome to everyone. Thanks to Nomar for letting us come back for actually what is a encore performance. We did this same presentation somewhere, I guess, in the third quarter last year. And as I understood, it was probably one of the better attended webinars or Zoom meetings that Nomar had put out last year. Just to kind of give you a feel, because we've gotten this question from a number of people asking, why are we promoting this? And so I just want to kind of get that out of the way early on. We're not promoting anything. This is not something that if you use or don't use, it's clearly your choice. As Will mentioned, the problem is whether you like it or not, there's nothing you can do to stop someone else from presenting an offer with one in it. And there's nothing you can do to choose not to present the offer because that itself would be a violation of LREC rules. I can tell you that it was kind of ironic that we had not one, not two, but three brokers reach out to us last year, kind of in close succession to one another, and ask us about this. So that's what we started having the topic. So we've done probably 6 or 8 or 10 of these in the last 6 or 8 months. And it's just designed to educate, right? So basically, what an escalation addendum is, and just so you know, we have different versions that we've accumulated, and obviously, if anybody wants one, we're more than willing to share it. But it's from other parts of the state, which primarily the East Coast and the West Coast have been using these for quite some time. And just kind of to prove that point, the 3 that I have, which were from the DC area, then I think the Northern Virginia area, and maybe on the West Coast. These were dated revision dates, so meaning they even predate that. But the revision dates on one of them was September 2010, another one was June of 2013, and the last one was January 2015. So just to prove the point, they've been around a while. If you don't like it, don't use it, but just keep in mind, if you list a lot of properties, there's a good chance that you might see one. So it behooves you to at least do what you're doing today, which is to gain a little bit of knowledge to be able to know how to respond to it. What an escalation addendum is, and this is in the material that I think I have a manual which we're willing to share with anybody who wants it. And I think Will had also put it into a PowerPoint. But basically what we're saying is it's a document that is used to crush competing contracts by automatically and incrementally increasing the buyer's net offer by a predetermined amount above other competing net offers up to a maximum cap amount. So basically what it says is, I'm willing to make an offer for X amount of dollars, but I'm willing to commit to going Y dollars above any other competing offer to the point where I don't exceed Z, meaning, I may be willing to pay $250. I may let you know that I'm willing to go $5,000 more than the highest offer, but I don't want my highest offer ultimately to be any higher than a certain number, 275, 2, whatever your number may be. So that's mechanically how it's supposed to work. Now, why does it become a useful tool? Well, as you guys know as well as we do, it's been quite a year of we went into last year obviously thinking things were good, and really sort of were through January and February, and then the pandemic hit. But even before the pandemic, we've been hearing for quite some time now that the biggest problem we're going to have in both the local markets and nationally is just the fact that there's a lack of inventory. So what happens when you have a lack of inventory? You have more people competing for the same properties, and that's going to drive some values up. So that's what this idea was. And as I've been told, is the fact that it's no different than what FHA allows in its home path offerings, to where you can submit an offer up to a certain dollar amount, and at the same time you can state that you're willing to go a little bit higher. Now, we've gotten a lot of responses, I guess, from some agents saying, well, I don't like it. I don't like, why are we giving this person a second chance? Well, be honest with you, we're saying anybody that wants a second chance can have a second chance. So it's not, we're not picking and choosing who has an opportunity to make their offer escalate. That anyone that makes an offer has the opportunity to do it themselves. And look, I mean, there's nothing more frustrating, and I'm sure you can attest to this, and as could your clients, is the fact that you see this beautiful house come on the market, you're ready to make an offer, and no sooner than you do so, there's 4 or 5 or 6 offers already out there that are higher, and you don't even get a chance to compete against that. So this right here would allow you to basically make an offer, to allow it to escalate up on the predetermined path in which you choose. Now, one of the other items that we get in terms of pushback is, well, why wouldn't you just offer the property up and do highest and best? Look, there's nothing wrong with highest and best. That's an option that you and your seller can discuss, and if that's a better fit for them, then that's fine. But what we're saying here, your question is, what is the potential benefit to a buyer of using an escalation? It's to get a second bite of the apple. You're not just married to the one offer. You're going on record. Somebody's got feedback. You're going on record as saying, in addition to this being my offer, I'm willing to make it even escalate to a higher point. So what we're saying is that your client can help get the house that they want. Perhaps not, this is not a silver bullet. It's not a win all be all, but it does create the possibility of a likelier possibility of your client prevailing and buying the house that they want, provided the seller and the listing agent understand what it is. I mean, that's been some of the pushback we've gotten, is the fact that some listing agents say, well, I don't like it. I'm not gonna deal with that. Well, look, that's not a luxury you have. You need to present any and all offers, and you need to make sure that you explain to your client what the impact of that is. By the same token, if you're sitting there working as a selling agent, you may not like it, but your buyer might say, hey, why don't we use one of these escalation clauses that I've been hearing about? Well, you know what? It would be in your best interest to know what that means. So that's the reason why this sharing of this information is important. So when should a buyer consider using an escalation addendum? Well, as I'd mentioned, we came into last year with what was supposed to be a very small inventory. And what did we do? Well, what did you guys do? You sold everything in sight. But you know what? There's still a lot of houses selling, but the inventory is getting smaller and smaller. So what does that dictate? It dictates that it's a seller's market. All of a sudden things are selling for a little bit more. Things are selling more quickly. We know that in the past, we've even seen some obvious attempts where the properties may be underlisted just to create more excitement, right? You remember the good old days, and if you want to call it the good old days, but if you really wanted a house, you felt like if you made a full price offer, hey, at least I know I'll get the house. Well, heck, I think is what we've seen in the last year is a full price offer, you might come in 5th, right? So I think this is just a different way to expand your perspective as to what it may take to help your client achieve what it is they're trying to achieve. Showing a little formula there that basically a low rate environment plus limited inventory is going to equal a very competitive marketplace. And that's where we are right now. I laugh, I'm sure just like the rest of y'all, I get littered with information day in, day out about what's going on in the market. And, and it's just, sometimes it gets portrayed almost unfairly. It'll say like, rates shot through the roof today. They went all the way from 2.97 to 303. It's like, that's rates shooting through the roof. Like I always tell clients, we've been closing this, when the last time rates were this low? It's a trick question. The answer is never, right? So, I mean, as low as the rates are with the limited supply of housing, it is going to, and it is happening. They're dictating that properties are selling for more. I'd done a closing a couple weeks ago, and it was an agent that was fairly active. It said she's actually started seeing a couple transactions now where the properties weren't even appraising. I mean, that's because they were, I guess, going up in value too quickly. Now we know, the market, I mean, what properties sell for will determine the market, but sometimes the market lags in terms of what the new value may be. So I think that's the concern, is the fact that you want to get what you want. You want to get it for a good price. You may, in fact, pay more than what it's worth, but if things continue in the path in which they're going, it's going to be worth that soon. It says, when should a buyer not consider using an escalation addendum? Well, clearly, if you're not expecting a multiple offer situation, the last thing you want to do is be competing against yourself. Now, I don't know how many of those are actually in existence nowadays. The things that I've been hearing, I talk to a lot of agents, a lot of lenders. If it's priced right and it's in good condition, it's going to sell rather quickly, right? So I think you can almost anticipate multiple offer situations in most transactions, but clearly not all. It says, if an agent has knowledge that a seller and listing agent are utilizing a different strategy, such as highest and best, or maybe everyone submits an offer on a certain date, well, then that may not be a time to use this. But then again, it may. I mean, if what we're saying is, this is my best offer, but by the way, I'm willing to go a little bit higher than my best. If you're a seller and the listing agent actually analyze that and accept it for what it's worth, that might still be the prevailing offer. Because clearly a little bit more than the highest offer is going to become the new highest offer, right? Now, I think one of the concerns you got to be careful with is you don't want to, and I'm seeing some of these typos here, that these are going to be Will's, not mine, just kidding. But anyway, what you don't want to do is compete against yourself. So you want to make sure that it's as much as you can determine how competitive this property is to use it or not use it. But clearly, one of the fallbacks in doing this, and you'll see this on a future slide, but basically, in essence, what you're doing is kind of showing, it's kind of like playing poker and showing your hand to the other side and say, what should I do? Should I raise you? Should I call you? What? You are going on record as saying, I'm willing to pay you this, but I'm also willing to pay you more than this. So we've heard some stories where sellers have come back and say, well, hey, let's just go with it. If you're telling me that you're willing to go as high as we said, well, I'll go X offer plus Y more than the best offer, but no higher than Z. If you're saying that you're willing to go as high as Z, I'm willing to sell it to you right now for Z. Now, that may leave a bad taste in your buyer's mouth, but at the end of the day, if the buyer said, in effect, I'm willing to buy this house and pay as much as Z to get it, well then, hey, congratulations, you got what you said you wanted, right? Now, you can go back and Monday morning quarterback all day long as to whether or not you could have gotten it for less, okay? It says, why would a seller entertain, that should be an offer with an escalation addendum? Because by my calculations, an offer that's willing to pay more than all the other ones, is even the highest, is a good thing, right? What's the potential benefit to a buyer? Well, we talked about that, is the fact that for a buyer, it's frustrating. And look, and this is going to be an education process. There's no doubt that buyers that you work with, that, everybody wants a deal. I want to try to get them down as low as I can, and you try to convince them that they need to go higher and not lower, but they want to prove the point, and then they lose and they lose and they lose. So at some point, they need to try a different strategy, and that's why I think it's your job to convince them that, hey, if you ever want to get a house in what's been predetermined as a very hot marketplace, then you may need to offer a little bit more, and maybe offer a sweetener in terms of how much more you're willing to go above and beyond any of the other offers that are out there. Now, I don't know what any of y'all may be seeing, but I can tell you that when we went through this series of this about 6 months ago, you can plug in a chat if you want to, but there was a fair amount of agents that had actually used these and used them successfully, and there was also a fair amount of agents that had actually seen them prevail, right? So, and that was 6 months ago. So I would imagine in the 6 months since, there's been more. because clearly it's still a very hot market. I can tell you just from the title company perspective, obviously last year when the pandemic hit, which has obviously been a horrible thing for so many people around the world, but I guess one of the things that we were fortunate from, I guess, what was happening, and then I guess increased because of that, was a very low rate environment. And so, we started doing a lot of refinances probably before you guys, our realtor friends, started selling a bunch of real estate. And then all of a sudden, the benefits of the low rates got into the real estate marketplace. And then all of a sudden we're doing a lot of refinances and also purchase transactions with you guys. Well, I can tell you right now, we're still doing a fair amount of both of those, but we're seeing more sales than refis, which, hey, for us, that's good, right? I mean, any deal's a good deal, but one that pays potentially a little bit more is even better. But it still begs the question as to how long can this go on if we don't forget about the fact that we had limited inventory for the last 2 or 3 years. How long can that inventory survive? Which is why this is such an important consideration. I mean, once again, not the end all be all, but a consideration. It says, is highest and best a better option for a seller? It could be, right? This is, we're not trying to tell you, hey, if you write this down, you're going to win all your offers. This is just another arrow in your quiver. I think it's your job in consultation with your client as to how you want to approach this. And look, you might know based on conversations that you've had with the listing agent, based on perhaps how long the property's been listed on the marketplace. Those factors may help determine which direction you want to go. So this is not a one-size-fits-all scenario. There are different options for different situations. And the question here, it says, is highest always the best? Well, no. I mean, we know that more money is better than less money as a general proposition. But closing is much better than not closing. So I think there are other things to consider. How quickly can it close? What are the other contingencies? Do I need something else to happen before I can buy your house? How much is someone putting down as a down payment? I mean, clearly that kind of gets the interest of more people, is whether or not you're putting more money at risk. Seller concessions, who's asking for what? And I can tell you, once again, sitting where we sit in on the title closing side, I'm not trying to say this to be arrogant, but obviously, we see more transactions than any of you guys do individually, because, we got a lot of different offices and we're still seeing a lot of seller concessions, right? It's, even though you could argue in a tight seller marketplace, why do I need to? And I think the answer is because buyers still have the same needs, some of the same needs they've had, in terms of them not having maybe enough liquidity to be able to fund themselves what the cost of the transaction may be. So, and look, I mean, in a marketplace where the value is supported, whatever a seller concession is theoretically is probably built into the price anyway, right? So if I wanted to sell for $255 and you wanted $5, well, then I could sell to you for $255 and accomplish my same net. And as long as the appraisal comes in, then we're fine. So we're still seeing most transactions, a high percentage of transactions with seller concessions, even though it's a very tight seller market. Okay, next slide. What are some of the pitfalls to the buyer of using an escalation addendum? Well, I think it's got to be, something that matters. If you say, well, I'm willing to go $250, but I'll go $3 more than the next highest, or the highest offer. That's not going to get someone's attention. I think, and look, and I don't know what the number is, but it's going to be something, depending on the size of the property, it might be several hundred, might be several thousand. It just depends. I think we've all seen scenarios where sometimes people really, really want a house, and there's no limits as to how much they want to pay. And I always tell this story, and one day my brother's going to slap me for telling the story, but years ago, he was buying a house in Houma for $1.2 million. Now, I mean, clearly I wouldn't have mind being a realtor on that. I was the attorney, but $1.2 million, well, the property appraised for $900,000. Well, he still bought the house for $1.2 million because he really, really wanted the house. Now, his response to me was, hey, they're leaving a lot of furniture. I said, not that much. But you know what? What do you do? How can you tell someone who really wants something that they can't have it. Well, you know what? If you got the wherewithal financially to do it, and you have the ability to make an offer that trumps all other offers, well, then that's a situation that they could prevail in, and this is perhaps going to help them do that. Now, what I had mentioned is one of the negatives, and you see this with the second bullet point, is the fact that if I told you I'm offering you X and I'm willing to pay Y more than a number, and I'm not going any higher than Z, well, then now you know what my number is, you know what my Z is. And so you might just come back and say, counter, I'll sell it to you for Z. Now that may seem like you got played, but hey, you just said that you'd be willing to pay that amount of money for that house. So congratulations, you won. That's a victory. Why don't you use it or view it as such? Here it says a listing agent may not understand its purpose and application. That's probably one of the bigger negatives, is the fact that agents don't understand, sellers don't understand. So if I understand it, it must be wrong, it must be bad. No, it just means that maybe you need to find a better way to understand it and realize if it adds value and it can help you accomplish what it is you're trying to accomplish, well then basically go ahead and do it. Someone says it's basically like eBay. There you go. If you want to eBay, you can do that. Says it seems the offer should have been countered to change, lender not outright rejected. Well, I don't know what that means. Anyway, all right. A listing agent may not like it, and once again, I've heard some discussions where people say, "Well, I'm just not going to present it." Well, you got to be careful with that. There's a section of the real estate license law, or is it probably rules and regs, I guess, and it's the 36 ways to lose your license. And one of those is actually failing to present any offer that's to your client that's been presented to you. So it really doesn't matter whether you like it or not, whether you think it's fair or not. If your client wants to make an offer that has one, or you need to present an offer and it has one, you need to do so. And if you don't, you're going to be putting yourself at risk of having the real estate commission coming down on you. It says, well, what are your concerns about fairness? We've heard a fair amount of discussion where people are saying, it's not fair. Why should this buyer get another option? Why shouldn't they just be married to what their original offer is? And a couple of ways I would respond to that is the fact that we're not giving anybody this right without giving everyone the right. But then secondly, hey, who do you represent? If your job is to have help your seller sell the property, do you really care whether or not another buyer was aware or wasn't aware or utilized or didn't utilize an escalation addendum? If you've helped your client sell the property and achieve an acceptable value, well, then you've done your job, right? And like I said, everybody has the same opportunity. So if they don't want to use it, that's a decision they made. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, if you lose out on enough transactions, then at some point you might decide, well, maybe I need to do something different, right? They say if you keep doing the same thing and you expect different results, that's by definition insanity. So if what you're doing isn't working, then clearly it's in your best interest to find something else that could perhaps work differently or work better. It says, how does dual agency affect the use of an escalation addendum? Full disclosure, I would tell you that when the first time or two that I had discussed this topic, virtually, I said it was probably a bad thing for dual agency, but I've done an about face. I think it really it's probably makes it the life of a dual agent perhaps a little bit easier. We know dual agency, and I ask this question a lot of times when I teach CE, is the fact that who likes dual agency? And it doesn't matter what size room it is, percentage wise, it's only, probably somewhere in the 10-15%, which is what I get by a show of hands. And then I ask the follow-up question, well, who does it anyway? And then you probably double the numbers to where it's probably 25 or 30%. And obviously, whether you like dual agency or not, you know enough about it mechanically to know that it pays better, right? So it's a good proposition. And look, I tell people, I kind of joke about it, but it's a true statement. Sometimes, 2 agents in a transaction is the right number. Sometimes 2 agents is one too many. sometimes, one agent is not enough. So it's not a one size fits all proposition, but I do think that basically, and I do a lot of first time home buyer classes, and I tell them this all the time. I said it's a closing ought to be a beautiful thing. It's what we all said we wanted, right? The buyer wanted to buy, here they are. The seller wanted to sell, here they are. The listing agent did his or her job. The selling agent did his or her job. We did our job. The lender did their job. It's like, why is it such a train wreck? And it shouldn't be that way. But sometimes, and I hate to say it, sometimes it may boil down. Look, it may be that the title company did a crappy job. That's a distinct possibility. But sometimes it may just be that the agents don't like each other, and that's just kind of it's not a good experience, right? So anyway, but what I was saying is, as it relates to a dual agency, I mean, clearly, if you're going to do it, you got to be careful with how you hold on to the information, how you share the information. I mean, effectively, you got somebody talking in one ear, and you're not letting the other side know, and then the other person's talking to this ear, and you're not supposed to let it know, and you have all this information, and you're trying to make sure you don't spill the beans. Well, I guess the good news with the escalation addendum, especially in a dual agency situation, is the fact that beans have already been spilt. I mean, your client's already gone on record as saying what they're willing to do. So to the extent that you want your job to be a little bit easier, this probably makes it a little bit easier because your buyer is going on record saying that he or she is willing to go up to Y above a number or Z as a total. Says, why do I need to know about this if I don't plan on using the escalation addendum? And we've talked about this a few times now, but look, we know buyers are really savvy nowadays. It's one of those things. You can Google anything. So we know that, and I was just at a meeting earlier, and it was with a bunch of different brokers. And one of the brokers was saying is the problem is there are situations now that sometimes your buyers may know more about this property or have more information available to them than perhaps you may know, because the internet allows so much information to be shared. So your client may be doing their homework. We know that we probably as a whole have more educated buyers because the internet allows that. We're seeing, I mean, I joke about this all the time. I've been practicing for 27 years. And when I got into the business, I was one of the younger attorneys, wherever I was at, whether it was Bayou or where I was at before that. And then all of a sudden, it just seems like I woke up and now I'm on the older end. I mean, it's not like, it used to be. And prior to this last year being as extremely busy as it's been, I had kind of migrated a lot to doing a lot of CE, a lot of administrative stuff, things like that. So I really hadn't been doing a whole lot of closings prior to this last year, although I've probably have booked about 18,000 of them overall. I probably hadn't done 300 in the last couple of years. Well, now with as busy as we've been, it's kind of been all hands on deck. So anybody that can closes. And it's just amazing when I look around, I see that everybody that's buying right now, this is not a true statement, but it just seems like they're born in the 80s or the 90s. I mean, that's really what's driving the market right now. There's a lot of millennials or whatever that may be, Y generation or who's Z or whatever it is at this point. But there's a lot of people that have been sitting on the sidelines. And look, we've been, if you look at the data, you've been seeing this, the fact that the younger generation didn't feel the need to buy any sooner than they needed to. They didn't feel the need to get married any sooner than they needed to. But I think they're as a group, they're a very educated group. And I think they realize the buying power that was afforded to them because of the low rates. And now all of a sudden they're buying like crazy. I closed 2 transactions in the last week and a half where, and look, there was a mom or a dad signing on with them, but 2 of my buyers in the last several weeks, one of them was born in 2000 and one of them was born in 2001. So it kind of gives you a sense as to where our market is moving. There's a lot more a younger crowd entering the market, which they were born with a cell phone in their hand, right? So they know how to get information. So I think it's important on us to make sure that we know more about everything that's out there, because I promise you, they're Googling everything themselves, and they know more about it as well. as I'd mentioned, kind of just repeating now, but basically you can't control what someone else's offer is going to look like in terms of how it's presented to you. And you may very well have it to where if you can utilize one of these yourselves, it may help your client achieve the ultimate goal, which is to buy the house what they're looking for. A couple of things here, just some little tidbits, other, as I call them, my other sweeteners. In a competitive market, and everybody's looking to pay the same thing and borrow the same amount of money and all that stuff, you know, you might want to grovel a little bit. You know, when was the last time you'd seen some type of transmittal letter in addition to an offer? I mean, we get kind of mechanical and just say, hell, here's my offer. Okay, you know, present it. Maybe if you can personalize it, you know, I mean, you're looking for any advantage, just something that puts your offer over the top beyond someone else's. We love your house. You know, the colors are gorgeous. You know, you must have created great memories here, and we look forward to creating our own, just whatever it takes. And look, I don't want to say we're saying that just to be insincere, because you probably are sincere. I mean, there's clearly, you know, your client's looking to buy this house. There's something about it that that makes them want to buy this one as opposed to buying another one. So I think just kind of memorializing that and including that into a offer transmittal may just be what it takes to put your offer above someone else's. Contingencies, less or better than more. You know, sometimes people ask me to, they'll write a contract and they'll ask me to review it and tell me what the thing is. Sometimes my response is like, I don't know what it says. And look, and I do this for a living. So I don't think you want to get too convoluted. You want to make it as clean as it can be. I mean, you want to make sure that you cover what you need to cover, but make sure that it's not, it doesn't have any more contingencies than what is necessary. And remember, you know, you're the professional here. So anything you're doing to help your client reduce an offer to writing, know what it says, know what it means, because I promise you, when things go bad, if things go bad, the person they're going to be looking at is you. And look, and I always tell this story. I said I've had an agent one time reach out to me and said, well, this is what I was trying to say, and this is what I wrote. And I said, yeah, but that's not what it says. Yeah, I know. And I was trying to say this, but this is what I wrote. I said, well, that's not what it says. Yeah, I know. And then I wrote this. I said, I get it. They said, what do you think? I said, well, I really think I was, it would be better if I'd be talking to the person on the other side, because you have problems. You know, if you write these things and your client is relying upon you as a professional, you need to make absolute certain that it means what it says it means. And, you know, I had one time you know, people had made an offer and they said, well, you know, we want the buyer to pay we want the purchaser to pay up to 6% of the sales price towards purchases, closing costs, and prepaids. Well, you know what? And, you know, the purchaser, from the seller's response, you pay as much as you want. I don't care, because you're not asking me. You know, so just be careful. Certain little things matter. The things that, you know, sometimes we've seen, you know, if you've been doing this long enough, you remember early on, people would ask for 6% of the sales price towards closing costs, and they wouldn't put prepaids. Well, then an astute seller and or listing agent would say, no. These prepaids are not closing costs. So we said we would pay up to a number, but that's not part of that number. You know, so you start gravitating towards, okay, well, I need it to be 6% of the sales price towards closing costs and prepaids. Well, then every now and then people get a little careless, and they'll say, well, the seller agrees to pay up to 6% of the buyer's closing costs and prepaids. Well, you know what? That's 94% less than what you thought, because obviously what you're looking for is 6% of the sales price. So just keep in mind that, you know, words matter. On here it says clarity is always a plus. Don't assume, write. As I tell people when I teach CE classes, as I said, I'm probably one of the most non-litigious attorneys out there. And look, I would, you know, I think there are some of your clients that would probably like a good fight if they could get one, but the vast majority of your clients really don't. They don't. I mean, they want to buy a house, they want to sell a house, they want to commit to what it is they think they've committed to. So, as opposed to saying, well, I'm not going to write language on there about what is included, or write language about what is excluded, because I think we can win the argument later. I can assure you, for the large part, your clients don't want to have an argument later. You know, it's one of those things that you want to. I'll read it out. There's questions coming across, but I'll hit those in a minute. You want to make sure that it reads adequately, and that it's no more complicated than what it needs to be. As I have on there, it says make sure your offer doesn't read like a calculus equation. If someone doesn't know what in the heck your offer says, they may very well reject it just on one that they understand better. Because clearly, there's a concern for any of us if we think we know what it says, but we're not sure. Well, then how can you educate your client as to how they should respond when you yourself don't even know what the offer says? So I think that's a concern as well. Is there another slide, Will? Okay. Well, a couple of these questions we're going to have, I'm just going to pull them up and see what it says. It says, please mute your mic, which we know we saw that a few times. We have on here, price is not always the best. How far are they in the loan process? What bank are they using? Just had one that was not the best, was not accepted because the seller didn't like the lender, even though they were $10,000 over the best. Right? Yeah, and that's obviously if the seller reaches that conclusion, that's on them. But we know, look, we've all been in this long enough to have some experience as to which lenders are better, and so you may, as an agent, you may have a concern that, hey, I would rather accept this offer than that offer because I don't know that XYZ lender can get it done. You be careful with that, right? Because I mean, obviously, you hate to throw any lender under the bus, and then particularly there may be a lender with a lot of loan officers. There may just been one bad experience, or maybe one bad loan officer, but it may not be an issue that all of them have. So I think I'd be careful to say that. But clearly, if the seller has firsthand knowledge or an experience as to a bad experience they've had with a particular lender, then clearly that's on them. We know, like I said, closing sooner than later is better. Some agents, some sellers feel better if the buyer puts down a larger down payment, especially if it's an all cash. But I've had people say, well, why are we going to penalize all cash buyer by making him or her put down a larger down payment than we would somebody else? Hey, that's a valid point. All right, what we got here? It says, well, of course, I guess the response to the other person was, it seems the offer should have been countered to change lender, not outright rejected without explanation of cause. Look, I mean, it's sellers want to sell their house. Until their house sells, they're incurring a lot of costs. So I agree that you would think that all lenders would be competent and look, I've had some agents do that. I've had some agents which I was not sure how I would feel about it if I was involved in that transaction other than as an attorney. But I've had some firsthand experiences where I've seen on a contract where a client seller responded saying, we will give you an extension, but you need to change lenders. I tell you, you got to be careful with that. I understand why that's happening, but by the same token, what you don't want to do is be the person that's trying to control the transaction, because now when it doesn't go right, they may be trying to hold you accountable on that as well. So I think I'd be careful with that. But clearly, I mean, it's not my job to identify them, but there are a lot of incredible lenders out there. And there are a lot of lenders out there some lenders out there that maybe aren't as good, or maybe it just wasn't as good an experience on a particular transaction. I think that's what we got to be careful with. I can tell you that, we closed a lot. I'm not getting the numbers, but we closed a lot of transactions last year. Were we perfect on all of them? Not even close. But you know what? We did our best. I mean, it's one of those things where volume's been up. That's a good thing, but you got to deal with it. We've had people that have been out due to COVID. We've had people that have been quarantined due to COVID, some of whom were able to work from home, others who were not. The good news, I'm proud to say, is we paid every one of them all throughout the year. We bonus pretty much everyone all throughout the year. But did we make some mistakes along the way? Absolutely. There's a lot of volume out there that we're all struggling to work with. Look, we've lost probably 3 or 4 or maybe 5 employees recently to lenders. Lenders they're strapped as much as we are. So they're trying to find good quality people, and hey, if that's a better fit for them, then I wish them all the best. but it's, we're all in the same challenges here. So, and look, I mean, we've all seen this movie before, not the pandemic movie, but we've seen the cycle. We've had good months, bad months, good times of the year, bad times of the year. And I think what a downturn allows us to do is catch our breath. But we really haven't seen a downturn. And that's what, I mean, look, it's good. We're all making money. But it is a little bit difficult to motivate people to be 100% cordial, 100% responsive, 100% on time when they're just flat out tired. And so I just say that just to any of y'all that may have had a closing with us that was less than spectacular, then we apologize for that. But I tell you, it's been a trying year. Y'all know this. Y'all been going through the same things we've been going through, and you do the best you can. And ultimately, everything that's supposed to close is closing, but there's some hiccups along the way. Okay, we got somebody ask that we email a copy of the PowerPoint, and what we'll probably do is make it available to Julie at No More. That way she can do that.
We'll definitely send it out sans the typos for sure. We'll make sure the offer is not ogre, and we'll send it out proper for sure to make sure everyone gets it.
Right, and I can tell you, which I thought was nice. I had somebody reach out to me about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and was saying they had heard about how good the Escalation Addendum meeting was last year. They wanted me to send them a recorded copy. I said, well, look, I didn't do it. It was done through No More, and I know No More is recording this as well. So I mean, once again, we'll defer to Julie. But if somebody wants to get a copy of this, I have no problem with it being shared. For anybody who can get any value out of it. All right. In multiple offer situation, must seller put escalation offer before asking other buyers to present highest offer. What is this? Well, as I'm reading the question, first of all, we're not asking for the seller to put an escalation offer. We're asking that the buyer do that. So maybe I'm misreading the question. Maybe the parties are reversed, but I mean, but definitely it's the job of the buyer, if they want to so utilize it, is to have an escalation addendum in there. And like I said, is it going to make you get all your deals? No, but if it makes you get one more deal than what you would have gotten otherwise, well, then that's a success story. And I can assure you, if it's whoever that one client is that they got the house they wanted, I can assure you with 100% certainty that was definitely a success story as it relates to them. It says, if you receive an escalation clause, you have to let the other agents that put offers in that you have an offer with an escalation clause. The answer is no. I mean, obviously you could, but then I think it gets really kind of perilous. But no, there's no duty to the other agent to let them know what the other offer looks like. It says, what would it be good verbiage to add to the contract? Well, nothing creative other than see attached escalation addendum. There are addenda out there that we can share with whoever wants them. And so basically, we know the way the real estate commission's mandated contract reads. There's kind of a table of contents, if you will, in terms of what addenda are being added. So I think you would just check the appropriate spot. You would put on their escalation addendum, and then you would add the escalation addendum as well, which I think it's a great, obviously, anything that's as it relates to contracts can always get better. But I think that was a huge plus years ago when the real estate commission made the decision to identify whatever addenda there are that are being added. Because I can tell you, I used to get a fair amount of agents would ask me, did you get all my addenda? My response would be, I don't know. How many do you have? Right. So but it's one of those things, you don't want to be held accountable for something that you're supposed to have that you don't have. And look, we see this a fair amount of times, as well as I do, that once you have a house under contract, more times than not, you're going to have an inspection period that's going to take place. And depending upon the results of that inspection, sometimes there may be some renegotiation of whether it be the price or some type of seller concession and things like that. And look, if that's what it takes to keep the deal together, then hey, more power to you. But just remember that both the title company and the lender need to also get copies of all of that. It's one of those things where if we're working off the wrong document, that's not a good thing, but we can probably recover fairly easily. But as it relates to the lender. If they're working off the wrong document, it's probably going to delay closing, and it probably should delay closing. So just make sure anything that changes, that it's shared properly.
And we will definitely send the recording of this along with the addendum that we would like to see being used. Is there a formal one that we see along the way? I know that you mentioned, Brent, that there's a couple we've seen around the state. Are you seeing one formal document going around?
No, that is one of the questions that's being asked as to whether or not LREC or any of the various boards have developed a standard escalation clause. I have not seen that. I can tell you what I normally see, from my vantage point, which is probably not much different than yours, is the fact that we probably see brokers kind of migrate towards things first, and then once they become more commonplace, then you'll probably see the boards offer that up as a, obviously not a mandatory, but as a basically an optional form. So I would think that there's some brokers out there that have them. I mean, anybody wants to chime in, they can. We can share with you what we have, and I think based upon the usage of the form, the more it gets used, the more likely it would be that one of the local boards would develop a form that would accommodate that. But I mean, they're effectively going to look the same. I mean, the ones that we have, I mean, they're different, but they're not different. It's just just formatting is slightly different, but they all kind of say the same thing. Yeah, this is a question we get a lot. It says, do the addenda you have ask for verification of offers, and what do you use to provide that information? Yeah, I mean, clearly someone's responding back to you and say, hey, congratulations, you win. There was another offer of X. Well, let's just get my alphabets correct. There was another offer of B. You agreed to go X more than that, and that was less than Y, so you win. What they're supposed to do is provide you evidence of that. Now, I haven't had conversations practically as to how resistant some may be. I know when we talked about this, either the first or the second time, I had an agent, a good friend of mine that we do a lot of business with, and she had given me a little snippet saying that NAR says there's really no such thing as the confidentiality of that offer, to where if somebody needed to present a copy to you of the competing offer in order to justify that your offer with the escalation now results in you being the highest bidder, just at a higher price, then that's okay. Now, having said that, it's not for me to tell every broker, every agent in the world, trust me on this, but they may make their own decisions. But I think also keep in mind that I think people ask that question because they don't want to feel like they're being played. Well, let's be honest. I mean, if I wanted to play, I could play you. I mean, I could, if you had an escalation addendum in there, and then I can ask Will, hey, could you do me a favor and just write another offer? That way, I'll use that as a predicate towards you having the escalation kick in, even though Will has no more interest in buying the house than anything else. So I think be careful. I mean, clearly we're relying upon the integrity of people. You definitely want to document as much as you can, but there's nothing that says that someone else couldn't have a friendly make an offer that would then elevate your offer to a higher number. So I think you got to, it's like Ronald Reagan used to say, trust but verify. I think you need to make sure that it looks right and smells right. Can we talk about PowerPoint? Okay. Have you seen any people adding an option fee? I'm not sure what that question is. Obviously, I know what an option is. We've seen a fair amount of contracts over the year. We probably don't see them as much anymore because we've kind of drawn our line in the sand. But we know there are a lot of people trying to assign contracts, which we're not averse to at all. But there's a fair amount of people trying to flip contracts. And I tell you, I would proceed with caution on those, because I can tell you that it's pretty well established legal principle in this, the law, that you cannot on a flip transaction use the money from the second deal to fund the first deal. So if somebody wants to do a back-to-back, I buy it at 12 and you buy it from me at 1, and I have the money to do it at 12 and I can pay myself back at 1, then that's okay. But if you're using the 1 o'clock to pay for the 12 o'clock, that's a problem. So we used to have a lot of offers to do those. We don't really receive them now because they know that we don't do them. I think the assignment of contract legally, I have no problem with, but practically you got to be careful because it creates some situations. You got parties that, you have three parties, two of which have agreed to deal with each other on two different contracts, but the number one and number three never met each other, but now they're in bed with each other. How is it that you're dealing with a stranger and all the disclosures have been made to party B, but now party A and C are doing business with each other? I'd say be careful. It's lenders have difficulty sometimes understanding it. Why am I paying a $10,000 or $15,000 as a assignment fee on a settlement statement? Well, hey, it's a legally valid contract. So I think it's explainable to the lender, but some lenders don't like things that aren't cookie cutter. And so if it looks a little bit different, that's a problem. I think the other problem is if you do the contracts A to B and B to C in sequencing, you may violate some other concerns that the lender has as it relates to seasoning. Sometimes they don't want properties that have been sold within X number of days. So you got to be careful with that too, because it clearly, like I have a set of twins that are actually in their last semester of law school right now. And I've been telling them and everybody else for a long time, like I went to law school and I learned this one thing, that if you don't own it, you can't sell it. Right. So we need to make sure that when we give a lender a title commitment, that it's not just conveniently what they want, it's actually what has transpired and what is. So if someone owns a piece of property and they sold it at 12 o'clock and to the new buyer, well, then that who now is becoming the seller, we need to make sure that we issue them a commitment that shows that this person has owned it for about an hour. And that may not sit well with lenders, but you know what? That's factually, truthfully what the situation is. And I think we got to be careful that we all want to make a living. We all want to do transactions, but we all want to do it correctly. And so I think I would be careful to make sure. I mean, I've seen a lot of emails lately, and I'm sure you guys have as well, where people are advertising not that they're selling a house, that they're selling a contract to a house. And they're trying to convince someone else to you pay me more than what I've committed to paying myself. Well, look, I mean, if that person may or may not even be a realtor, right? So you got to ask yourself, where's the real estate commission in this, right? The real estate commission's job is to make sure, obviously, that licensed realtors also always do their job correctly, but it's also their job to make sure that they protect the real estate industry. And so if you have people out there presenting themselves as being realtor-like, when I say realtor, real estate agent-like, because you don't have to be a realtor necessarily, but they're not a licensed real estate agent, then that's a problem, right? So I think we got to be careful. If it's legitimate and there's a way to do it, hey, I'm right there with you. But I've done this long enough, and I've seen enough good transactions and bad transactions, and I have no desire, no appetite to do any transaction that's not 100%, above board. So just keep that in mind. We get a lot of questions. People always asking, well, can we disperse differently than what the CD or the HUD says? It's like, no, I mean, look, you'd be shocked, maybe not, how many times we get lenders now ask us on top of everything else to see how, not just how we closed and what we said we were going to do, but how do we disperse? Give me a detailed description of who you wrote checks to, right? So our job as a settlement agent is just to do the deal, to disperse on the deal that everybody else has approved and participated in, and most importantly, that the lender based their loan decisions on or lending decisions on. So if we're telling them that, hey, based upon everything that we've seen, this is how we're going to disperse, and then we disperse it differently, well, then heck, we're dead in the water. So we're not going to do that either. Look, I mean, if you want a good, clean transaction then where I can help you do it correctly, then we would love to work with you. But I tell you, there's a lot of, there's transactions out there that probably are happening that shouldn't be happening because they're done wrong. And I guess eventually it'll come to head just like it always does. But like I said, we're here to help you. If you have questions, I can definitely answer your questions. I can give you free advice in a lot of areas, but to help you figure out how to do a deal that shouldn't happen the way it's being offered to happen, I'm not your guy.
One of the interesting questions that I had saw, Brent, that popped up, and maybe you can answer this, because we are seeing so many multiple offers come through. Maybe it's just not one escalation addendum. Maybe there's a couple come through. How do you field multiple escalation addendums?
Well, obviously you can't, first of all, you can't stop it. And so if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But then I think you just have to kind of go through it all as it's written, right? Sequentially, how the offers were presented, which one invokes the next one. And then ultimately, I hate to keep being redundant with my alphabet, but X, Y, and Z, at some point, we're going to keep interjecting the Y's until we get to a point, and then maybe we may get to the level where somebody's Z doesn't exist anymore because my Z is higher than your Z. So I think applying them as they appear in order sequentially is going to help resolve that. So it could be a little sticky, absolutely.
I think understanding your seller and their highest points and their motivation and what they're looking out of the deal is going to be what prevails as the highest deal at the end of the day. And if it's price, it's price. If it's timing on how fast they want to close, then it's timing. So it just kind of depends on it's a tool in your tool belt if you choose to use it. And if you choose not to use it, you need to be aware of it if it comes across your desk.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions at the moment? I know this was some information. I had Brent's email up there. Brent's an available guy, Brent@BayouTitle.com. You can't get too easier than that. But we have attorneys all over the state. So if you do have questions, talk to the guy.
I'm very festive. Will told me make sure I wear some green. That's my St. Patty's Day tie.
There you go. Absolutely. All right, because I know you're Italian, so I appreciate the green, because the Irish Italian parade also did not happen this year when y'all.
I'm not Italian. I'm French.
Wait, you're French?
La liberté.
What?
Yeah, mais oui.
The more you know. The more you know. So you must be like what generation Louisiana? Your family must be here for a while, or were you a?
My dad's actually from outside of Boston.
Okay. Boston.
Anyway, look, best of luck to y'all. If y'all have any questions, believe me, I like answering questions, especially if it can help you. The best time to ask a question is before it's a problem. If people ask me all the time, they try to solve their problem. Well, look, I could have helped you avoid the problem much more easily than I could to help you solve the problem. So that's free conversation. So thank y'all. Thanks for having us. Will, thanks for putting it on. And good luck. God bless. Y'all be safe. And hopefully we'll all be hugging each other and kissing each other and doing CE classes in person real soon, right? All right. Good luck.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Julie.